let's talk about my favorite fantasy books. I went through my video archive to see how long it had been since I had filmed a video like this, and also to see if enough things had changed on the list to justify refilming it. But to my surprise, I have not filmed a top 10 fantasy books vid. Like, what the heck? I've been on YouTube for 5 years. I've talked about these things a lot, and they've been highlighted in other videos, but I've never actually given you a compiled list. So this is great. This is me in a snapshot. So if you're new to the channel, this will give you a good idea of the types of books that just drive me as a reader. And most of these I read long enough ago that I really don't mention them often on my channel anymore. But I do have a couple of new reads that are going to dethrone a couple of old favorites. Let's get started. And in no particular order, because if you make me try to rank them, we'll be here all day. I'll start with the book that I generally consider my favorite book of all time, Fool's Fate by Robin Hobb. This is book 3 in the Tawny Man trilogy. It's safe to say that this book changed my life. I finished this book in a sobbing heap and I looked around and there was no one to talk to about it. So I started a book blog and got active on Goodreads, and look how far we've come. Very seldom do books hit me as profoundly as this one did. And it's not necessarily just the book itself, it's the culmination of everything that had happened up until that point. And I'm gonna be real with you, the Farseer trilogy, there were moments when I was reading it where I was like, wow, this is really profound. I love how deeply connected I feel to the characters. And there were others where I was like, wow, this is dragging out way too long. I'm really not sure I like where the plot is going. I ended the trilogy thinking it was about a 3-star trilogy for me. Like, it had some really good moments, but it also dragged a little bit. People don't tell you that often when they're Realm of the Elderlings fans. This is my #1 favorite series of all time, but it didn't start that way. It's one of those that grows on you, and with each passing book you gain a deeper connection to everything going on, to the point where this feels like a real place with things happening to real people, and I just think it's so beautiful, but it does take a while to get into it. So if you read Farseer for the first time, you're getting the groundwork. You're building the foundation for what is to come, and it's so worth it. But I still love this book the most. Red Seas Under Red Skies, the second Gentleman Bastard book by Scott Lynch. The first one was such a delight. It knocked my socks off. It was so funny. It was so clever. It was so well done. I liked this one even more. There was an adventure aspect to it. The camaraderie got even deeper. I love the friendships in this book. The relationships are everything. And this is also another one that hit me profoundly. In fact, I'm not allowed to say that again because every book that I'm going to mention today meets that criteria. And I thought this was such a perfect culmination of everything I love in fantasy, and I hope there's more. I can't wait. The 4th book has been outstanding for quite a few years now. Speaking of, Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin, book 3 in the Song of Ice and Fire. I would not rank this series anywhere near my top. I liked it. It was brilliantly done. There were so many things about it that were awesome. But this particular book was such a banger that it makes my list. It had amazing pacing, the perfect culmination of events. It followed the characters I actually cared about and progressed their stories to the umpteenth degree. There are very few books that I read where the momentum just kind of takes my breath away. That's what this one did for me. I wish the other books in the series had landed the same for me, but that's okay. I mean, I still enjoyed them. 4-star reads across the board, but this one was the solid 5. Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. This is book 5, technically, in the First Law world. This is actually part of the Great Leveling trilogy. They're standalones, but any completionist will tell you don't read them as standalones. Like, read the First Law trilogy first and then, like, go by publication order. This book is my darling. I love this thing so much. I had such a moment with this series. This one to me represented everything that he did well, and this is the first time in his writing where I was starting to pick out all of the brilliant things that he was doing. Like the patterns to the storytelling, the way he described certain things, like all of it came together in here. And I really love the revenge story aspect. It's so funny. You ask an Abercrombie fan which book was their favorite, and you'll get all across the board. It's so funny to me that people pick different ones. So if you haven't tried Abercrombie yet, there's a little bit in there for everybody. And I liked First Law, but it's this book that solidified me as a super fan. Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, book 1 in the Stormlight Archive series. You know it's a really meaningful series to you when you have trouble selecting which book to represent, because at least 3 of them for me deserved a spot on this list. But I ended up going with this one because when I read it, I thought to myself, this represents the next era of world building. Like, this is so different from anything that had been done before, at least in my experience. And I thought it was just brilliant. And the experience I had with it, this is probably the longest book I had read to date. And not a single solitary page of this was wasted for me. Every moment just, oh, I love it so much. And I'm a world building reader. I love good characters, but world building for me is what sells it. I read to escape reality. Not that reality is that bad, but it's my favorite pastime, right? So this book, I've read it a few times now, will always deserve a place on my shrine. Kushiel's Skyen by Jacqueline Carey. This is Imriel's trilogy, technically book 4 in the Kushiel's Dart saga. Why book 4? I really like that initial trilogy, especially the first book. This one, of all the things, has one of my all-time favorite battle sequences in it. It's epic, it's historically influenced, it's carnal, it's romantic. This book has everything. In fact, the thought crossed my mind after I read Fourth Wing that if most people had experienced romance in a fantasy setting to the degree that this series offers, maybe they wouldn't have as much patience for the romantasy category. I mean, they're offering totally different things. But for me, epic love story, slow burn, sustainably drawn out, beautifully done. I love everything about this series, and this one takes the cake as my favorite of. Daughter of the Empire by Janny Wirtz and Raymond E. Feist. I am waiting for the Broken Binding to come out with an edition of this series because I love it so much. This is actually one of my very first favorite books. I read it when I was 16, and I've told the story before, but I canceled plans in the summer to sit home and read this book because I had such, oh, it was so good. Awesome world building, amazing in-depth characters. If you've happened to have read the Magician duology before diving in, there's just so much context in there that makes it rich. And for me, this book was dang near flawless. I mean, the perfect blend between world building, character, pacing, plot, writing. It was so good. And I am glad that in recent years it has gotten a ton of attention on at least my corner of BookTube. And hopefully more people will give it a try, because it truly is a gem. I like the whole trilogy. Sometimes you can never quite live up to the bang that the first book had on your brain. Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, book 1 in the Kingkiller Chronicles. This book, I know even mentioning it, a lot of you will have a visceral reaction. Like, there's a lot of baggage along this series now, and I really hate that, because when I first read this thing, it was close to when it first came out. One of my coworkers got an ARC and read it and just absolutely loved it, recommended it to me, and it took me a few years, but I'd ended up reading it. And honestly, I won contests selling this book. They were like, hey, pick a series that you can talk passionately about and see how many you can sell. I won. I love this thing. The writing is beautiful. The school setting is so cool. I liked the characters. I liked it enough to be forgiving of things that other people really hate on the series for. Like, I don't care, I loved it. Don't ruin my experience with your negative talk. And I don't get ornery like that with a lot of things, but this one, it was so good. Now, the thing is, it's been so long since those days when I was hand selling the titles that I don't even remember a lot of what the book was about. I just remember how it made me feel and certain plot points. So if the third one ever does come out, which I am losing faith, I've lost faith, let's be real, I would need to reread everything. And so it'd be interesting to see if on a reread, compared to all of the newer things that I've read that I absolutely love, if it would still stand up. But it makes the list, even still. Okay, this is the fun part. Even though I haven't done a video on this, I know I have made lists in my head on like, which books would I nominate to be in my top 10? And over again, Emperor's Blades by Brian Staveley and Promise of Blood make the list. In fact, Brian McClellan for the longest time was one of my top 3 favorite authors. I love the way he writes relationships, and I love his dry humor and stories. But I've got 2 books that I've read recently that I think are going to dethrone these, but I want to give these a little bit of a moment. In my corner of BookTube, many people read this for a buddy read, and community-wide, people hated this book. And I'm like, did we read different things? I loved this thing. Now, I will say, the female character, at this point in the series, I was giving her the benefit of the doubt. I was like, there's going to be a fun twist here that's going to make this not as pathetic as it is. Had I been judging right away, I probably would have been just as hostile as everybody else. But I love the combat aspect to it. I love the pacing of the story. I love the setting. There's these giant bird mounts that they ride, and there's training sequences around there. It was very exotic, the whole thing. And to me, this book and the series as a whole, and even the newest book that he's come out with, which, by the way, there's not any news for a sequel yet, and it hurts me. All of it to me is like fantasy candy. This is the stuff that drives me as a reader. I just really enjoyed the crap out of this one, but it's being dethroned today. The other one, Promise of Blood, I loved this first book so much. Like I said, the dry humor went a long way with me. I like that the magic system was really subtle but interesting. I like the character dynamics. I like the political aspect of this fantasy, and I like that it was flintlock military fantasy. I didn't know I was into that until I read this. And the second trilogy is even more fun. Books 2 and 3 of this initial trilogy I didn't love as much as the first book, but then the set that follows after, Sins of Empire, really good stuff. But those have been knocked out by my recent reads within the last couple of years. Blood Over Bright Haven, my favorite book of 2025. I've gushed about this a lot on my channel recently, but to me, this story, my favorite thing about it was the through line. The author had a clear intention of the type of story she was trying to write, and just like grabs you right from the prologue and doesn't let go the entire way through. There's an academic aspect, and the magic working was so freaking cool. And as things start to spiral out of control, you feel the momentum with them. And I was left with that wow factor. Like, I am so glad I read this book. It was amazing. And then the one that never lets up, my favorite book of 2024, 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City by K.J. Parker. As we have established, I like military fantasy. The writing in this is so freaking clever. The whole trilogy has elements of this where the storytelling is so unconventional and it seems like he's breaking rules left and right. And it's funny. It is so freaking funny. Kind of like Terry Pratchett stuff where it's so subtle that you might not even have noticed a joke was there if you didn't get it. So I laughed a ton of times throughout this book. I thought it was so cleverly done. I think novelty is one of my favorite things about this book. I've read so many books. I feel like I'm around 2,000 on Goodreads, 2,000 books that I've read. And it's hard to come across something that I haven't read before. And I feel like that's why I struggle a lot with classic fantasy. So I'm kind of chasing that high of something in a form that I've never quite read before. And this fit the bill completely. And then it made me laugh. And then it really went somewhere. Like, it had meaning. It wasn't just a funny, stupid book. It's not stupid, but you know what I mean. So yeah, delighted. And I've been very, very slowly working my way through more Parker works. I just think he's just an awesome writer. That's the lineup of stuff. Interestingly enough, if you had me rank my favorite series of all time, it would be a very different list. For example, my number one with that, well, it's Realm of the Elderlings, but my number two is Draconius Memoria by Anthony Ryan for a lot of the same reasons that I love many of these other titles. But there wasn't one single book that stuck out with me with this one. It was more like the trilogy itself was one just amazing slam dunk of a thing. So if you like all of those, I'm on a personal mission to get more people to read this series because it's amazing. There's my lineup. Let me know if any of these would also make your list. And in fact, I'd be very curious to hear what your top 3 favorite, all-time favorite fantasy books are. Thanks so much for joining me for this one. Link to my Patreon is in the description. I appreciate all of your support, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.